We'll be talking a bit more about SSG in just a bit, but first I want to focus on the VP roster here. As you already saw in that clip, of course, double flex support backline is the name of the game. Will they change anything up, you think, Jake?
Honestly, no. I mean, I think with their success in the last time they played this series, you kind of have to believe in yourself, keep it rolling with players like Colosseo being so good on the Kiriko. I'm sure he's going to want to keep pushing these flanks. However, I think they're going to have a tougher test, right, with SSG adapting. I think we're going to need to see a huge performance out of especially Sana, Shockwave, and Rajaro, right? The front line, I think, is going to need to be the focus now with, I'm sure, SSG having reviewed these VODs, being aware of these risky Kiriko flanks. I mean, in the end, I'm not a huge believer in how consistent that playstyle is against a team that is aware of you and ready to punish. And I think SSG is going to be coming out of the lab focused on the supports. It's going to need to be the DPS and the tank from VP to take the lead in this time.
Yeah, and we talked to SSG's Hadi yesterday, Johnny, and he did say, like, you know, we've been trying to force compositions that were just not our style. So back to the drawing board, back to their comfort picks. Is that a winning formula, though?
It is. I do think so. And we see Backbone here in the starting lineup. And a couple of those maps they won against Virtus.Pro, it's when they play the Brawl, right? It's when they actually utilize Backbone's skill set of playing the Bastion here against Twisted Minds, but also mostly the Mei to help out in the front line, and then also being able to play the Reaper at some point. So Backbone is going to be a crucial player in this matchup. And if SSG are forced to partake in this dive as well, I do think we could see Sparker on the Tracer as well. And Sparker on the Tracer against Sana in that matchup, that's going to be an uphill battle. So does Sparker have good enough of a Tracer to kind of like stave Sana off? So I'm looking out for Sparker and Backbone. I think they're going to be crucial in the maps that SSG are looking to win in the series.
I'm very excited to see which team has to kind of pull out of their comfort zone for this one. If we're looking at the Preds, I went with SSG. I feel losing is learning really applies to them. Like, they're going to come back stronger than ever. I loved that they went just full-on comfort picks yesterday and looked so strong. This is the squad that can defy the meta. They've done it in the past. I believe they can do it again.
You know, since the last series was 3-2, and I to be honest, I just felt that VP gets away with a lot in that series, a lot of like very risky play that I don't think will work when SSG is on their comfort zone. I think it worked when SSG is forcing dive because they're just frankly not the quickest dealing with those flanks. They're just not nearly as confident on that setup. But in a rush style, I think they're gonna just be a little bit more consistent. And remember that last series was 3-2. SSG really only needs to find a little bit more performance, a little bit more mileage in some of those, you know, more hotly contested maps. And I think they're going to be able to do it given the adaptation. I'm not sure VP has like another layer to their style.
And it seems like we all disrespect VP going into this series because I do think SSG will have adapted accordingly. They have their maps that they do like to win with Backbone in the lineup. And so to spoil it for the casters a little bit, I'm sorry, but Lijiang Tower is going to be our first map here. It's a map picked by SSG, and I think this map will be crucial to kick off the series. SSG, in my opinion, with Backbone in the lineup, they need to win this match and get off to a good start.
Let's see if they can set the tone on map number 1. Let's see what our community has to say.
Wow.
Honestly,
that is pretty
to be expected. I mean, it's really difficult to bet against SSG after their entire year's performance, really. I mean, they showed up and performed time and time again. A little dip here and there, but it's time to come back right now. An elimination match. The winner will be moving on to the grand final to face ENCE. It is a rematch, though. Our casters, Mitch and Matt, how are we feeling about this one? Same result, different result? Where are we at?
I actually think we're all pretty heavily affected by watching VP get rolled by ENCE, because that backline looked really vulnerable to that dive pressure. I think as soon as Kevster switched Tracer in that series, they really were able to put a lot of pressure down on Colosseo and Gala respectively. So I can see why we're feeling this way. And now we've seen in that previous game, as they've come out of an identity crisis, Matt, SSG have pushed that Ryan comp. They played it on Circuit Royal, for example. That to me was the most telling thing, that they are quote unquote going back to their roots a bit more. The Malga comps also look really good. So those two that they can rely on. And again, we've questioned their dive setup, right? Jake felt like it was a little slow and a little lacking adaptation.
It was. And I think Lijiang Tower is like a map pick here for SSG. It's one that if they want to go back to the, well, with the Reinhardt type of style, they definitely can, right? You can play the Reinhardt here, Ramatra, so a lot of different options here for SSG to move away from potentially playing a dive-centric style of play. For VP, I think it's like, how do you continue to make this support line work, right? We kind of saw it, I would say maybe get a little bit exposed the other day, right? But I think today it's like got to be really clean, especially I think Space Station's going to come in with some adjustments.
Johnny said he's looking at the DPS line for Space Station, and I tend to agree. Can Psycho, as a Tracer player, put that same level of duress down on the back line of Virtus.Pro that Kev still was able to? And, you know, what does the matchup against someone like Sauna look like if the Tracers are trying to battle each other out? See the Sims out of the gates here. Space Station actually come out of the Ramatra setup here. They're going to be playing into Sigma.
Yes, I think it's probably a little bit of a read. VP ran something pretty similarly, I believe, the last time we saw them play, especially with Sauna on the far in this close quarter map, as Hadi just trying to take some space here on the staircase away from Rajara.
You know, see a Sauna, of course, on the Faro once more. This is not the first time we've seen VP take her into control center over the last couple of days. So the rush style for Space Station. Although no Ryan with them here, no May set up. They still fancy having that Ash for that longer range pressure. We can see Backbone trying to lay that down right now. Although you wonder, he's subbed into this map maybe for a different pick, as otherwise they'd have Sparker happily there. Gala falls early though. That backline pressure is already being felt. Virtus.Pro hit where it hurts. Psycho eventually is brought down. Those Rajaru is able to respond, but Space Station with the first cap.
Nice rock there from Rajara. Just no follow-up there on the funny Astro. And I think you see them going with the Ramatra here, right? Because I think there's just so many things you would have to do to make the Reinhardt work. Is that's actually going to be a flip as Hadi gets knocked off the point there for just a second.
Even Nemesis form is low, but Immortality Kill gets thrown down instantly by Landon, and Ant Matrix to follow it up. The Kitsune Rush is a little bit too much. Space Station being overwhelmed. Landon's lost an ammo already. Psycho at least able to punish Sauna for a mile over extension here, but all the Space Station have been shoved off the point. Would have to regroup here without Hadi.
Yeah, and I think you see the difference in terms of the hit scan power right now, right? Shockwave already with that Bob, throws it right in through the Kitsune Rush. Some help there with Sauna as you end up having VP take a fight win for Space Station. You use your Ant Matrix, right? Trying to deny them pushing through that Kitsune Rush. Don't have that here for this next fight, but you do have the possibility to kind of use this speed boost with Sound Barrier quite aggressively, but that's going to be Sauna taking out
and
back.
VP are playing a rush comp map, but when that Kiriko ultimate's available, they may as well be. They ran over the top of Space Station earlier on and be able to get to, obviously, that Backbone. Remove the Ash here. Because when the Space Station once again are on a reset, VP now have gotten themselves into the lead, 47% and counting. Walking now into a gravitic flux, and will have to match beats in this next fight too.
Yeah, as trying to have Sauna here now on the Tracer instead of the Far, just looking for picks, maybe potentially on the Backbone. It's going to be a gravitic flux. Oh, it's actually a really nice
little vortex
there from Hadi. Then knocks him down from the high ground. It's a really nice play from
Hadi. And not easy to do. Eventually, Sigma gets too high for the vortex to get him. You really have to place it early. Canale in trouble here. Yeah, Kiriko can't do too much there. Psycho laying that pressure down. What a beautiful counter. Virtus.Pro, this is a concession. They've switched to a Ramatra composition of their own.
Yeah, but I think the backline here for Space Station is going to be a little bit better, right? Having the Immortality field for that Ramatra, especially in kind of the duels head-to-head. I think it's such an impactful ability. For a second, almost like an ultimate, right? But the Backbone that takes out Gallus, and I have no speed, right? So this is going to be pretty bad for VP. Space Station's going to get some extra time out of this, but actually, VP decides to invest the Kitsune Rush here, and I think they kind of catch Space Station off guard.
And they manufacture that speed as well, where otherwise would have come for the Lucio. Sauna, close one there. Hardy's seen better days, that's for sure. Very quick switch up here for Virtus.Pro to the Ramatra composition. And again, the Kitsune Rush is even more devastating now with this setup as opposed to the Sigma.
And I mean, they lose their speed boost, right? They lose Gala, and they decide to Kitsune Rush anyway as VP kind of catches Space Station near the doorway. So with the Ramatra swap, it's going to be Maga with the Venture here for Space Station. So dropping that hit scan.
In comes Hardy. Sound Barrier used prematurely there for Space Station, but Virtus.Pro are going to give them the fight they were looking for. Shockwave definitely has nowhere to go, but it's Backbone falling. Sauna's able to get in there. The Tracer pressure after the switch off the Farah has been immaculate. Hardy goes around the outside here, leaving Rajaro on the point to deal with Psycho, but that's a beautiful pulse that Rajaro's able to avoid. It was on the shield, not the Ramatra in the end. And here's that Nemesis form now. Hardy in a virtual 1v3 locally. Able to withstand so much of this damage because of that cardiac overdrive, and then a disengage, charge back, but VP still hold the point, and they're at 99.
Yeah, and they're getting very close to support ultimates here. As you're going to have the Annihilation as well. The Space Station desperately needs some kills here before these ultimates come on.
Jaro backed up though. He's a little bit low, close to an Annihilation. Here's a Sound Barrier that's going to get in there. Here it comes. The Ramatra ultimate now putting a ton of pressure down on Space Station. And nowhere really to hide outside of behind these walls. And LB found by Sauna digs them out. Hardy eventually has to subject himself to the Ramatra ultimate. And Virtus.Pro switch off the Sigma to great effect.
Yeah, as they were not able to find some of those kills I was talking about, as Sound Barrier, Kitsune Rush, Annihilation all come online. And there's no way that Spacestation's going to be able to kind of fight out of that. So this is probably closer to what they wanted to do. You had mentioned, like, you know, having Backbone in the game, potentially trying to play something different, not necessarily like the Ashe player for this team, right? You would think Sparker, where, you know, you would think Backbone plays like Reaper, plays Venture, maybe some May, right? See what Spacestation decides to do. It looks like potentially Backbone on the Sojourn here.
Sojourn obviously had a couple changes, right? Crucially now, critical hits refund will give her 10 energy. So you can build up those rails a little more frequently now. Backbone's already pushed up here. So hit scan rolls for Backbone across the entirety of Lijiang Tower at the moment. Not what we expected to see. Carla picked off there. Yeah, just some interesting spacing. He was up there with Rajaro, and Rajaro essentially was ignored and then desuited after the fact.
Yeah, and I wonder if we see VP decide to make some changes here with the Ramatra on the other side here for Spacestation, as they decided to make some changes in the last round, right? Go and you know, mirror that Ramatra, but Rajaro's D.Va's very strong, as it'll be Spacestation in control of the point first. I think it's really important. If they can create space for Shockwave, I think you'll see good things happen. That is a nice move there from Funny Astro, though, as Shockwave goes off the side.
Spacestation really punishing Virtus.Pro, trying to play from the bridge here. It's not to say that White Room isn't a viable, you know, route that VP can take. They'll have to deal with an annoying disruptor shot. What do you think about the Sojourn over the Ashe here as a Backbone?
I mean, I think the Ashe has been obviously the pick for most teams, you know, consistently. You're not going to get big value out of the Dynamite, though. It definitely puts a little bit more pressure on the D.Va, but it's going to be Rajaro going right back over and playing that Ramatra, and that's a really fast Kitsune rush there from Canale. I don't think they expected that whatsoever.
And there's always nothing you can do about that combination. Canale built that very quickly on virtue of Rajaro spending most of the previous fights on D.Va getting utterly pummeled, so very quickly, Virtus.Pro back in control. I say quickly, but 46% is elapsed here for Spacestation, and they hold a beat for the next engagement.
Yeah, now look how far VP's actually pushed up here, maybe trying to find one player off guard and then be able to kind of extend this percentage. But Hadi getting very close here. You're going to have this Nemesis form potentially into the Annihilation, and oh, that's actually Landon dropping. You probably would have used a Kitsune Rush here. It's going to be Hadi using the Annihilation here. It feels like a must-win fight for Spacestation now.
I mean, Hadi, I think, realizes that this one is lost. The Annihilation was good. He pushed it deep into Virtus.Pro's spawn. But somehow, Backbone finds himself fighting Sauna and Rajaro, which is not what you planned for as Sojourn there. Two separate fights split up across the map. And now Hadi just gets staggered here. What? They commit the rush. Wow, Landon tries to save him.
So good for VP.
That, questionable indeed, because especially where he swip step to is right in front of Rajaro, who just pummels him. Oh, that's not good.
I mean, you had the Annihilation, Sound Barrier, and Kitsune Rush used there for really nothing for Spacestation Gaming. That allows VP. I mean, they're going to have both support ults here, Mitch. They're going to have the Annihilation. I mean, it's a huge turn of events here for Virtus.Pro.
For Spacestation, virtually. Maybe a pick off this overclock for Backbone needs to happen, but here's the Annihilation, and all of your humors gets flirted away. That's the Sojourn pick up, and Rajaro seems happy enough with that. Note that no other support ultimates were committed here. A half a fight for Virtus.Pro to shut down Backbone, who was looking for an opening.
And then if they try and come over the bridge here yet again, right, you have this Kitsune Rush to potentially use, so VP set up in a great spot. It looks like it'll be Spacestation rotating over towards that White Room, which is also another great spot to lay down this Kitsune Rush from Canale
Dynamites
and close out map number 1.
Sauna has a pulse bomb as well. It's tough for Spacestation. They're definitely unfavored in this matchup. The deck is stacked against them. What's on the top, though? Canale spots Sauna, still trying to work that flank, actually being battered back by Psycho briefly, who also has a pulse bomb of his own to spend. Here we go, it's the rush, it's on for Young and Old. Straight into White Room we go. That was a pretty desperate Suzu thrown in the direction of Backbone, but the stick is good. And the Sojourn's out of the picture now. Hadi has no help. Psycho at least is able to find something with his Tracer ultimate, and an environmental kill for Funny Astro evens the ledger somewhat. But Sauna's still at large. Landon though finds a kunai. Rajaro, can he salvage this? He at least has the healing. Not Canale playing from the window, just trying to keep the Ramatra topped up here, but eventually Rajaro is going to need a little bit more help, and they this time finally look at Canale. Now the healing for Rajaro is going to be cut off. He gets one. The Spacestation fight back in, and they have a rush of their own.
Oh man, it was a later beat from Virtus.Pro as well, but Spacestation, they just find the kills in the end. So Rajaro had both Canale and Gala alive, but not, enough damage to kind of kill some of the, more squishier, the slippier targets on the point, right? Psycho's still alive, Funny Astro Landon as well. So now for Spacestation, right? You have your own annihilation within this Kitsune Rush, and all you have here for VP is Shockwave's Bob. He's going to throw it in straight away.
That's an annoying spot for Hardy now. He does need to turn around and deal with that. Buy some time at least, but Virtus.Pro aren't in control of the point. They still need to make the play. Hardy's going to push up here. An annihilation close to spawn would be devastating for Virtus.Pro as they don't have a support ultimate to cover that up. To White Room instead is the option.
The Bob at least slows them down a little bit, right? Like they can't just kind of like run through that Kitsune Rush. It just kind of puts down some damage, slows them down, but gonna have maybe one more fight here as Spacestation's gonna get up to 99%, and that's gonna be a huge pick dealing with Zon.
There's no time. Virtus.Pro still have to go for this. How have they fallen apart at the end of this round? They come in with 5 and instantly Backbone got the huge pick on Sauna. Rajaro falls to the pulse bomb and Spacestation basically watched Virtus.Pro give it up. They gave it up.
Oh man, in a scenario which it looked like incredibly dire for Spacestation Gaming, right? In a situation where they end up kind of throwing both support ults in there, Annihilation really kind of in for nothing. They battle back in the end and take that round number 2. That is massive there for Spacestation. Now an opportunity here to steal Lijiang Tower.
There's at least 2 fights there for Spacestation that are statistically virtually unwinnable. Like very, very low likelihood of them coming out on top, just on basis of ultimates and positioning. Man, losing Sauna at the start of that fight really hurt them. They were on paper looking so good. Spacestation though turn the tides, they flip the odds, and now we're headed over to night markets.
What do you think about them going to the Winston here? So it'll be the Winston with the Reaper for potentially this final point here, going up against that Ramatra. I think
they know
they're gonna have Sona go Tracer.
They know VP are gonna play off the point here. So Winston's gonna allow them to cross this gap like that and make it a little bit harder to play safely off the point. Also allows Backbone to get in just like this. Rajaro, I think, got a Suzu there for his trouble, but Canale's under a little bit of pressure. This front line is at risk of buckling, crumbling. Backbone is going to bring the tank down, but in the meantime, Shockwave's been able to do some of his best work. He found 2. Virtus.Pro are able to stabilize.
Yeah, and I think it's like Rajaro with that, power block can just live for so long with healing that you see like Hadi and Backbone so focused on trying to deal with that Ramatra that it just allows Sauna and Shockwave to just put down so much damage that's really not returned in their view, right? It's all going into Rajaro, so kind of almost using that Ramatra as a big bait there. So, Funny Astro took a big shot there from Shockwave, almost got taken out, so be VP in control of the point here first. They actually play off of the point now.
Nice Suzu. I mean, Landon can't see Hardy, but is able to use the AoE to keep the Winston standing. But it gets harder at this point for Spacestation. If Virtus.Pro are playing out in the middle of the map and not off the point, it's harder for the Winston to move up without getting poked down. Shockwave pretty far forward, all things considered. But Gala was able to follow up and deal with Backbone, who was already retreating at low health.
Yeah, and you had lost Hadi, right? So even though you flip the point, you're not going to be able to hold on for long as VP gets that kill onto the Winston and then flips the point with relative ease and winning a lot of these fights for VP without any investment in terms of ultimate as Backbone will use the TP, try and cross this gap.
He gets out, so does Hardy. They've set up a staging point in front of the capture point itself. Pulse they're avoided for the most part. Looks like the Primal Rage got Hardy out of range, and that's an environmental kill on Shockwave. Something again Ramatra does not offer you here. Trying to clear the point now. And Hardy's done well to create that space. Backbone gets in, deals, of course, with the tank. And that might be what Backbone really is in this map for. To have this Winston option. This Reaper option, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, Reaper, Venture, right, those type of heroes, but Backbone ends up playing some hit scan here, a little bit of a rare sighting for Spacestation is VP ends up investing the sound barrier into that niche. So for Spacestation, you have your sound barrier, just kind of like throw in there when that Kitsune Rush comes down, and same with the Annihilation, and that Backbone Reaper damage is going to be so lethal.
I think heard a Shadow Step or something. Reaper coming their way. Death Blossom comes out here for Backbone, but no one's really there to be subject to it. Virtus.Pro had already moved to the point itself, and Backbone waits for heals inside that Shadow Step. Rajaro steps up again, clearing the way. Funny Astro pummeled, but eventually Reckoning will be coming for Rajaro. And he'll be traded out. It's going to be Spacestation maintain control here.
Yeah, they should get up and take a lead. I think the positive for VP, though, is that they don't end up using their Kitsune Rush and they get the beat out on the other side, right? So you can respond here with your own Kitsune Rush in your Annihilation, right? That's going to be very difficult for Spacestation to kind of kite or live through and get a point flip back.
Backbone will have to leave that corner. Over towards the point now. Sorta constantly aware of Psycho. He may have tracked a pulse bomb build on the enemy Tracer as well, so he's doubly aware of a flank. He's found him. Has to pick up that mini for the time being now as the fight is going down on the point proper. It's going to be a Kitsune Rush that Space Station heavily respect. They give it up.
So they kite the Kitsune Rush, and actually the VP doesn't end up using their Annihilation. They just kind of scare them off with that Kitsune Rush. It'll actually be the Annihilation inside of Space Station's Rush, and that's land and drop.
Yeah, instantly Sorta able to find that Kiriko. Landon still able to get the Kitsune Rush off in general though. Pulse Bomb connecting for Sorta. Psycho somehow plucks him out of thin air. He barely recombinated his molecules and was able to find yet another elimination. Shockwave nowhere to go, but Canal drops in with the Suzu, and Hardy says, okay, well, guess I'm cooked.
Yeah, I mean, what, you're going to have Funny Astro here to get a touch, but it's going to be a real desperation here for Space Station as VP very close to taking map number 1. Backbone here, Psycho as well.
He can't touch.
Back on the far, trying to touch. Yeah, can't get there, so it'll be Virtus.Pro taking our first map.
Really interesting first map, actually. I do think we've definitely looking at a different Space Station, or one that has some convictions about how they want to play now. We saw that at the very start of Control Center. The problem is that Virtus.Pro, their weakness, as we've seen, is really good dive comps or really good diva compositions that can get into that backline and really mess with them.
Yeah.
But we're also looking at like a Kiriko Lucio setup for VP. That's not their weakest look, right? The weakness you're trying to exploit on that team, in theory, is that they don't play the Brigana setup. On a map like this, that's not really as relevant. We got to talk about the Winston though on that night market map, because it definitely felt like Hardy had his work cut out for him.
Yeah, it really was not able to kind of get anything done on the dive. I think for Space Station, the little bit of the scary part is that, you know, you come in here and play a little bit of a rush, right, with that Ramatra, and they just mirror it on VP. They have no problem, it seems like, taking that, matchup. I mean, that also, the Ramatra matchup allows you to kind of play, you know, that Lucio and Kiriko pretty consistently, right? We saw, I believe it was Space Station run a little bit of like Lucio with the Baptiste for a period in the first round. But here, when we go to this, you know, final point, right, and it's like Winston with the Reaper, they just play the Ramatra right into it, and they have no problem.
VP were playing Lucio Kiriko with a Sigma, right? That's how concerned they were about their backline. Like, you could play Lucio Baptiste there, and they have in the past, but there's concerns, of course, about the Baptiste suffering that level of Tracer pressure that they suffered at the hands of Ents. So VP already looking to play safer, more consistent backlines that maybe don't have that same level of throughput, but with a tank that has the cooldowns that can mitigate damage and can make them easier to heal up in general. Here's your stats coming out of the first map. Space Station, a lot of questions for them, right? I mean, they do have options. They've got an extra DPS player that can be rotated in, but Psycho is definitely their best look at Tracer. Backbone gave them that Reaper option that sadly, again, it pulled up a little bit short, but one has to ask, is that just because it was in a Winston shell, where Hardy really is, you know, I think playing losing matchups into a rush tank?
Well, what would you even want to play here now if you are Space Station Gaming, right? Clearly with like the Lijiang Tower pick, you want to play a little bit more of a rush style of play. Do you go back and play like a Flashpoint? So, you know, the maps they ended up winning was
they want to play
City and Lijiang Tower against VP, so they do want to play probably a little bit of like what we saw the other day, right? The Rhine with like the Bastion type of setup.
The maps I think they want to play in this series are New Junk City, Runasapi, and Circuit Royal for sure. So we're going to see a substitution here. Sparker comes in now. I want you to throw your minds back to yesterday. Sparker is playing the Widowmaker in that Rhine comp shell. It's Widow Bastion setup, with obviously Backbone set up by Hardy. So a little bit of a variation on the previous Symmetra TP, the Rhine comp in setup, but still very, very potent. And, you know, that makes us look over to VP and say, okay, what's the answer here? Because they have an incredible hit-scan DPS player in Shockwave, one who I think, when it comes to Widow, really is the kind of person that can handle Sparker. But we have data now on what SSG are looking to do on this map. I don't know what the response is. Does Rajaro just pick the SIG?
These Bastion these Bastion comps have given trouble to a lot of teams across both regions, right? And so here's the thing, you can pick Sigma, right? But you're not going to have a Baptiste, right? I mean, no immortality to be able to kind of extend that fight a little bit longer to where Sigma can actually pay off. So this would be a big change here for VP if they decide to play this on defense. Potentially, okay, so Bap Illari here, defense with a Reinhardt potentially here. For VP, no, it'll be a Ramatra. So going with a pretty greedy backline yet again, right? I know we'll just focus on a lot of damage.
If there's any map where you can do it, it's this one, because the flank angles are pretty horrendous for attacking teams. So actually getting access to Canaille and Gala, I'm going to say it one time today, but getting purchase on that sort of support line is going to be very, very difficult. So Virtus.Pro maybe less concerned about that.
The pylon placements are really good here as well, right? You can kind of like get pylons directly around corners where there's absolutely no sight of returning it here for Spacestation. So they will play the Widow Bastion type of setup. They just use that TP to get to this corner right away. And we'll see how they decide to punish this. There's a lot of damage there on the backbone.
So that's the window where Virtus.Pro can be aggressive here. They can't do that right now. They have to back away. And of course, Ramatra has such limited damage mitigation ability outside of the shield when he's out of Nemesis form. So you notice that, he has to be very careful about how he plays this corner, wait for those Nemesis form cooldowns to expire. Sparker here's definitely a threat to both Canaille and Gala. In fact, one of the scariest heroes to have on the map, especially against the Pharah comp. But eventually, you feel like he has to win out these matchups.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you need the Pharah for the damage, right? I know into this kind of composition, but just an easy target there for Sparker, just flying through the sky as they get Rajaro first. They deal with that immortality field. They push through. They kill the Ramatra. And then it's pretty easy after that there for Space Station as they're going to get very close to this first checkpoint.
So what's the answer to then to this Sparker Widowmaker? How do Virtus.Pro shut this down?
I mean, what could you potentially play here, right?
Widow?
Pit need some of that damage is well, I think if you play Widow, you just don't have enough damage, right? Unless you're gonna play Shockwave on Widow, right? So that's a lot of the heal pressure kind of gone. Where a nice shot there on the exit there from Sparker. I think the answer would be like getting really aggressive with like I think we saw another team try it the other day where they tried to play Genji into this, right? You play just really aggro, like once the Bastion doesn't have wheels mode anymore. Then you kind of just collapse onto that Bastion, right? It's just kind of about living through some of that big damage that he's going to put down.
Virtus.Pro, they're finding two big Pharah picks that really set them up. I think it was Landon falling that basically signaled the full-scale retreat for Space Station. But no changes to the comp on the attacking side, and now they have that infra side to work with. So Sauna sheepishly going to have to back around that corner of the building. Gala knows he can't do this for long. He cannot linger in midair. Sparker eventually falls there to Rajaro. They managed to catch the Widow out playing coast side, but that's a charge that will scoop Rajaro up. Gala here, though, wants to push up regardless.
They want this kill on the hottie so bad.
They're not going to get it. I think he's still quite healthy. Nice conk. It's a little bit of a scary spot to be in for Space Station now. The pressure, though, eventually is going to ease off, and they go for a sound barrier to get themselves out back into the fight. It's going to be Sorta coming with the barrage, finds one. It's traded. Hardy able to take the Pharah down. And Gala and Shockwave have to get out. Bob comes in, hopefully to buy some time, but they'll be able to burn this down awful quick.
Yeah. And what a mess of a fight there is immortality you used to kind of keep Hottie up. Now you get Rajaro back in the fight as well. I believe Shockwave's still here, just kind of getting into a little bit of a safer position as do you have Annihilation here? Do you decide to pop this? As it looks like Space Station wants to get a little bit more topped up before they head around this corner.
So does Rajaro, though. He's back to full health now. An awkward angle for Backbone to try and dig these DPS out of that little corner. But Rajaro, pops the Annihilation, says, you aren't going anywhere. Still, Canaille falls, so as soon as this Annihilation does expire, there's a huge opening for Space Station to push up. So I want to use that window to deal with the Widowmaker, though. That is absolutely going to make it harder for Space Station.
You do have the amplification matrix here for the Bastion, potentially like around the corner. That's going to be the M matrix, the Bastion damage coming on through it. Is see Rajaro trying to get out of the way, but they find Landon. They find both supports actually, and now you're down to 30 seconds here. I mean, this has been great defense here from VP.
Sauna has been so good this map, Matt. Sparker getting picked up early in these fights has been huge for the Pharah. It means you can go up a gear, just swing out into the open and pump that Baptiste with rockets. One more chance here for Space Station on their very own map pick, folks. Hardy looks to step up now, but it's going to be a captive Sun that's going to ward them away. Gala plays the corner. Oh, what a connection! That's beautiful. They don't have the immortality field in play, but it's not going to help them. Stunning defense here from Virtus.Pro.
And I got to see, you mentioned it, a really impressive performance from Sauna, where a lot of people would just kind of consider Sauna like mostly a tracer player, right? Playing a decent amount of Pharah, in our Lijiang Tower map, and then now here on Circuit, and really making it pay off for VP. So they prevent Spacestation from even getting that first checkpoint. This would be a brutal loss here for Spacestation, right? You kind of look at some of the other maps that you got left in the pool. I mean, it would be a tough way to kind of evaluate back.
This should be their best chance. This very map. And things were looking ropey for Virtus.Pro at one point in that round. Spacestation, they finally get like Rajaro into a fight where they can run him over, and I think Sparker finds 2 picks on the Widowmaker, and they're off to the races. And there's a point where Rajaro's stuck in a corner, and there's like only 2 VP players there, him and Shockwave. He hangs around, waits, gets healed up, then throws an Annihilation down, and all of a sudden Virtus.Pro are fighting from a position of power. Spacestation had so many opportunities to at least get that first checkpoint there.
Yeah, I mean, it just took so long to develop, right? And just getting around that final corner, especially when Rajaro was able to kind of like hold position on the point, and then you had Shockwave like looking over with that Ashe, and you had lost Sparker, I believe, to Sauna. So all that long range kind of just a long range threat, right? For Shockwave is completely gone, so he can play pretty free around the corner, as Spacestation will end up be playing a Mei look here. So
this is supposed to punish the Ryan playing up on the corner. And I think that's why Hardy's actually just backed off of it entirely. Normally you'd like maybe throw some fire strikes, you'd brawl a little bit, swing that hammer. But with the Mei here, Spacestation of course can try and tease Virtus.Pro to come forward and then throw a wall up behind them. But they've given a lot of ground regardless.
I mean, look at the damage there from the far, right? Right off the rip, Backbone and Hardy getting quite low. Is that's the biggest threat, right? Is can't exactly go around that corner peak Sparker, but nice dynamite. That's going to connect with a few players, so they're going to back up yet again. There's a lot of space being given up here by Spacestation.
Sauna's getting a lot of free poke, though. It's going to be so hard to heal through this, even with the Baptiste on your side. Sparker had a decent lineup for a shot there, but he got conked to the left and has to grapple now to try and post back up on this same angle. He gets there, but the card is getting awfully close. Rajaro might have seen a couple of these more squishy players close up, so Nemesis form is popped and he goes for it. Sauna still has to respect that Widow play. Another grapple here for Sparker, but the tree obscures his view of the Pharah, and that's the window that Gala's been able to make use of. Lennon is now down, the immortality field with him. Not to mention, of course, that raw output that is so desperately needed now with this ridiculous amount of damage being leveraged at them. And now Sparker's running out of sightlines to play. He's got no safety and no hope. Virtus.Pro take away Circuit Royal, which was supposed to be a silver bullet here for Spacestation. That's fallen flat.
Ian, you talked about it, the amount of damage output there for Virtus.Pro. It's just too much for Spacestation to deal with, right? They kind of like back into that corner that we always see teams, right by that first point. There's like that bush to the left if you're kind of coming down the street. You see a lot of people go stand there and die. That's where like basically half of Spacestation ended up. And then they kind of have to make a decision to get out. The Rajaro pops the Nemesis form because Hadi tries to like cross the gap. He's like, I know if I'm standing here, I'm just gonna end up dying, right? So I have to kind of make a play to go contest, get to a different spot on the map, and it just kind of bleed out over time. It feels like there.
Can we talk about the decision then to play Mei for Spacestation on that defense, right?
What are you gonna play?
Again, I mean, like you're playing against Ashe and Pharah. You do have a Widow. Right? You have a Widow and Mei. Is there not a better option? Do you not think? Can you find something that like pressures this Pharah? Because look, Sparker looks so good when he's got these nice sightlines, right? He's looking really clean. But on defense, he's often forced off them, conked off them at times. And don't get me wrong, he found some really important kills, especially even in that last fight. But it really felt like they didn't have many options. Can you run back the defensive Bastion? Is there something else like in your front line that gives you a bit more threat against a Ramatra? I know the Mei can give you that peak potential, but you can't interact really with Pharah outside of your Widow shooting at her, which you can't without a good sightline.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a world in which you play the kind of like the Bastion on defense. I also think it's a little bit of, they kind of want to play either like Lucio or the Brig, right? You don't really have a opportunity to kind of return some of the damage from the support line, right? So you're always going to be at somewhat of a damage disadvantage in this type of matchup here for Space Station, where they want to probably try and play these like more long drawn out fights with, the Mei walls kind of splitting off the Ramatra, getting the Ramatra low, putting the Reinhardt in good positions, right? But it is very difficult, I think, for Sparker, right, to kind of have some safe haven to be able to get those shots on the Widowmaker, because a lot of times we're on with Sonic, he's just like pre-firing the corners that Sparker's just kind of coming out of, and there's nothing he can do.
And here are your stats here coming out of Circuit Royal. That was their second map of the series, and Space Station, one where they were really hoping to gain a foothold against the Virtus.Pro, who seem to be really comfortable playing whatever they like. They don't seem to be forced into very much at all by Space Station, unless it's a switch to a Ramatra composition, like away from some sort of poke setup, which they're more than happy to do. So the ever-present question presents itself again. Hybrid Flashpoint Push are our game types. Where do we go?
Yeah, so in the previous matchup, the one that went 3-2, it was Runis Sapi was a map pick for Space Station. So potentially, no, they end up losing it actually 130 to 50 in terms of
they got rolled by Rajaro's
Space Station does win New Junk City against VP in that first matchup. So potentially New Junk City, you can maybe see them play Maga with the Venture type of style, right? That could be a path to victory here.
Is there? Yeah, I'm trying to think of other push maps. You don't think they want to go to Colosseo here, right?
We did see them play Colosseo the other day, I believe. We saw them. Did they play it against Twisted Minds? I think yes, they did.
They tried the Winston setup there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I think they also played some Reinhardt on Colosseo as well. So it'll be Psycho in for Backbone. No, Psycho in for Sparker. So this would probably say. This would probably say you're going to see like, Tracer Venture Maga type of style, right? Psycho comes in to play the Tracer. Backbone can play, knows whether it be like the Venture or the Mei or something along those lines. So they will play Colosseo.
Okay, so the less expected, I think, of the push maps, we sort of discussed with Nasapi, but it went really badly for SSG last time they played it. They played Reinhardt there, and it was a drubbing. Colosseo obviously allows a little bit more for that Winston kind of play. Psycho obviously, comes in here, and we expect to see a Tracer. He can play Pharah as well. That is an option if you want to play in these kind of setups, but yeah, maybe.
Against Twisted Minds, they dominated on this map yesterday. Remember, they almost got like that full map completion. I believe they were playing. I believe they were playing Tracer Mei with the Reinhardt in that type of matchup. So we'll see what they decide to do. But Twisted Minds kind of basically committed to playing that Diva the entire time. There's no real kind of counter there that came through. So see if VP has an answers. This would be this would be like really interesting from the standpoint that like I think Space Station's kind of found more of their footing in like what they want to play. But it also seems like VP can kind of like match that and kind of hit that level, right?
Space Station getting about the closest to the old zombie comp that we have sort of seen from any team here. The Reaper in with the Winston. So you have dive pressure, can still link up with Psycho. You also have a lot to, punish like Rajaro just overrunning you in the front line, because that's what VP are looking to do. Kitsune Rush, of course, with the Nemesis form Ramatra getting right down your throat. That's been a problem, especially when we saw it on that first map of the series. It was Lijiang Tower. So Sauna is going to be on the Pharah. This could be an issue for Space Station.
There's still no answer for this Pharah, right? Especially with that Reaper on the opposite sides, as both teams kind of flip sides of the map here. So I think for Space Station, you need to win these fights fast, right? The longer they go and VP can kind of stay alive, the more kind of chip damage you're taking from the Dynamite, from the Pharah. It's actually going to be VP in a position to potentially even just like walk away with a bot here, as you see how much damage going down onto Space Station.
Rajaro is so aggressive there as well. The way he used Nemesis form, he just made a beeline for Hardy. Didn't even care to the fact that Backbone popped up behind him. What a dominant showing here to start off the map. And with the map getting flipped by these teams, it generally means we get a very volatile early engagement. Space Station, of course, have the Malga composition option, but I I don't really think we've seen much of him on Colosseo since he was utterly busted for that week or so.
Yeah, since he was like, you know, cardiac overdrive, just like healed the entire team for their whole health bars. That's kind of the last time we saw that. But it was a nice amount of damage that comes out from Shockwave early on with the Dynamite, and then some follow-up from Sauna, and that is kind of what gives VP the sign that they can go, right? They have such a large, you know, healing advantage there at that moment in terms of like health pools, right? So,
I mean,
Spacestation will play them
these
on.
Malco comps are still susceptible to Pharah setups, though. Like, especially so. You get poked down so frequently. You don't want to use cardiac overdrive every time you take half your health, but it happens too frequently.
Especially with VP in control of the map where the bot is at the moment, right? They don't exactly have to kind of like push in, right? So it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be on the Space Station across this gap, and they just don't, like, they're just burning out over time, right? Like, for VP, I mean, it's such an advantage getting the push that they got early on, right? Because they don't have to push up. Like, it's really Space Station needs to be aggressive, but it's just poke damage coming in from VP the entire time.
Landon literally used his Kiriko ultimate for extra healing throughput. That's it. Space Station was so low, and in a Lucio Kiriko shell, it's really hard to like cover up a lot of this poke damage that they're suffering. They can't do it easily, it just takes time. So they pop that ult, they get no value from it. Backbone goes down because he loses a matchup against Ashe a lot of the time. This comp is awful against what Virtus.Pro were doing.
Yeah, it does not look great right now as Hadi taking a load of damage here as they're going to bring in Backbone on the Sombras. Both supports here, you know, on a little bit of a flank for Space Station, but this is going to be VP getting that first checkpoint is from the moment of the game where VP got control of the bot, gave themselves a little bit of advantage, and then Space Station has to be kind of super aggro to get it. It's just that chip damage over time. They're not able to heal it up.
What is the Sombra?
And then as soon as there's an advantage, I mean, the Sombra is there to potentially like hack onto Rajaro. You see right there.
Well, sound barriers here for both sides, but the Annihilation just cuts a little deeper. Landon was able to find Sauna, so that Pharah threat has now been extinguished. Cage fight thrown up, Psycho able to make good use of this, and finally Virtus.Pro brought to a stop. At the cost, of course, of that Malga ultimate alongside the sound barrier, but finally Space Station gets something done, and VP make the switch up now to a bit more of a poke down tank.
Yeah, and I mean, this is where the VP's really tested, right? Because you don't have like a Baptiste to kind of keep the Sigma alive when that, you know, aggression comes on in. So can you do that with the Lucio in the Kiri? They've been able to do it thus far. As see Rajaro push on up. No way you're going to be able to live through that. I mean, that's a lot of damage there. Kitsune rush with a stomp right on the Gala's head.
Space Station had the blueprints for two sort of fight-winning setups, right? They able to, you know, sound barrier and just, you know, make use of the cage fight. And then like the Kiriko ultimate is pretty darn nice for them as well. Hardy can run on in there, charge, stomp, and make very good use of that haste buff. So 2 consecutive fights for Space Station.
Now they're going to end up with an EMP as well here, so could be quite good here. But they fall behind by so much early on, right? 83 meters is pretty significant.
Can be made up though. They still have over half of the round to play. But Virtus.Pro switch up and pick up the Tracer here instead of the Pharah. And it might just have been the Sombra that has precipitated this hero switch. I guess the hack is annoying for Pharah, but the EMP is bad for everybody, I'll tell you that much. Rajaro fourth back here. Sauna taken down. I think the Suzu kept the Sigma alive. Note that this is another Lucio Kiriko setup with Sigma for Virtus.Pro. Rajaro here can poke him down.
This should be a good spot though for Virtus.Pro to play defense from the standpoint that they can kind of just play spread out, right? You see like the Sigma kind of playing across there from the Ashe, now a Forest swap again, like just trying to poke down through this choke, you know, having that high ground control on defense should be a spot where they can control. A Space Station maybe trying to set something up there with like a hack and a speed boost sound barrier. Is that what we're going for? No, it's going to be the Kitsune
rush. That so quickly, Landon. It's only taken him 2 fights to get that available. Sound barrier also going to be used in Space Station, just throwing ultimate after ultimate here to gain ground. And by God, it's worked. Psycho here has a pulse. Probably did spot Sauna pop up there or wanted to abscond, so now they'll play inside the low room. Pretty scary against Hyperspheres here. Hardy already quite low, looking to charge in now. Of course, Cardiac Overdrive is active. Rajaro has to use a grass to eat up some of this Malga damage, and Shockwave has gone down in the meantime. The sound barrier, though, should allow VP to bounce back from that player deficit. They've finally gotten some bot control.
Yeah, the later beat pays off so well there for VP. Is Psycho does end up taking out Sauna there towards the end, but the bot will go back in the opposite direction, more back towards mid-map. And Space Station, it would have been awesome there for them to be able to get that checkpoint, right? Get checkpoint there. Even if you lose the fight, then you kind of put yourself in a better position, 3:40 on the clock, to be able to come back, where now VP can kind of control this space yet again.
Cage fight. Just around a corner. Obviously, gravitic flux there that cannot afford it to be interrupted by that hack. It's Rajaro going for it though, does connect it. Suzu, yep, they do have that invulnerability frame that extends long enough after they touch down, but the cage fight's active. Rajaro's under a lot of pressure, but the Suzu's going to keep him standing, and the Bob goes a long way there for Virtus.Pro to deal with that cage fight without the Malga in play.
Yeah, I mean, not having the Malga in the cage fight, right? I mean, that's like a large source of damage that goes down during that ultimate, because all the crits that the Malga just kind of, being able to lay down with relative ease with everybody caught in there. Is Hottie now will go over to Winston. So this is like kind of a little bit more of a look that you would expect with Kariko Lucio and then Sombra Tracer, right? An all-out dive. Can they execute it well enough though? Is that's actually, they're gonna lose to Lucio. Sombra goes with like a solo barrage.
So they're gonna go for it though, committing the EMP now into the fight. Backbone is so low, and Hottie actually disengaged there because the Kitsune Rush was the prescribed response from Virtus.Pro. So they sucked that EMP up and were happy to bear it and throw down the Kiriko ultimate. Like I said, even with a Sigma comp, you can look like a rush team with that ultimate in play.
Yeah, and even more bot progress here for Virtus.Pro as we head to under 2 minutes. So Backbone over to the Sojourn here, so moving away from that Sombra, just trying to get a little bit more pressure now onto the shield and onto Rajaro, as they've not been able to dislodge this Sigma no matter what they throw at him.
Rush here for Space Station. Sound barrier now as Funny Astro was forced to hold it on account of being dead in that last fight. Thrown down straight away. Hardy gets Suzu'd instantly as well, maybe just to shrug off that accretion. Here's a sound barrier in from Gala, though. He wants to force his front line back if he possibly can. Sauna's under a lot of pressure in the air, though. And the sound barrier later for Space Station means that they are far more durable when it counts.
Yeah, it just feels pretty bad though, right? In that 1:30 minutes on the clock, you have to use both support ults to get out of the spawn for Space Station. So they'll get the bot. I think getting checkpoint here would be huge, right? I know unlocking that closer spawn, and Rajaro goes over to the D.Va. Interesting enough, this is like one of the first times we've seen the D.Va, right? Throughout this series, this is what you kind of expect, from VP. Very good at playing this D.Va, but it's one of the first times because we haven't seen the Winston that much from Space Station.
It's still seeing that just general preference, I think, for Backbone to play Sojourn over Ash. See if that's going to have the impact he's looking for. So Primal Rage, the key ultimate in this fight, the only one right now. But Kanao should have that Kitsune Rush available when it is required. Honey wants to push up here and at least maybe get this health pack taken up and then continue his flank. Looking at the back line now, I think maybe booped up mid-air. Could have been a coach gun from Shockwave. He's going to try and commit to it though with the Primal. If Shockwave doesn't have a coach gun, he's in deep trouble. Yep, straight over the edge. Nothing you can do about that. Space Station looking close to that first checkpoint now with Kanale falling. It's almost guaranteed. More work to be done in this last 30 seconds, but Space Station have a seat at the table at least.
Yeah, Rajaro will contest, trying to maybe send this one into OT, but that'll be checkpoint. It'll stop here for just a little bit as Space Station gives themselves at least a fighting chance here towards the end of the map. It'll be VP with that Kitsune Rush and Bob to just kind of lay down through this long alleyway. To be pretty devastating. Pulse bomb here from Psycho, though. Can he find one of those high targets?
Bob now from the high ground. That's Shockwave trying to get him to help them contest. Good Suzu there. 4 players grouped up here for Space Station, but all forced away by Bob. We're in overtime. At some point, they need to get out and touch, but they lost Hardy to the Bob. And now Landon's going to fall. Space Station Gaming can't even get the beat off. Funny Astro bowled over before he had a chance to use it. And there it is. Virtus.Pro. Savage Space Station. And they will be kicking on, folks. That's right, booking their ticket to a rematch with the Krakens.
And this is a match that a lot of people would have said, like, okay, coming back in off of a 3-2 loss, right? Space Station, they can cook a little bit, come up with some different comps. They did in terms of what they played in their first series, but it seemed like VP had all of the answers all of the time. And regardless of what it was, whether it was a little bit of D.Va there towards the end, but really a lot of Ramatra throughout the entire series, They pull this one out. It's a pretty impressive performance here from VP. I know being able to beat Spacestation twice here in the main event.
This time in a far more clean fashion as well. I feel like that's what's important. Hardy was adamant in that interview, says, the identity crisis is over. We've figured it out. That was bravado, 100% bravado. We are looking at an SSG who are still struggling, still unsure about their direction. Now they got some time off to ponder it though. As Virtus.Pro, of course, get that rematch against an ENCE who so far look untouchable, who have exposed so many of their weaknesses. So now we're hoping the Virtus.Pro have been doing their homework and brushing up. Let's head over to the desk here to break down the game that was Virtus.Pro gearing up for a explosive finale in EMEA.
They are indeed. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Yeah, VP, apologies are due. We weren't familiar with your game.
That was brutal.
Yep.
And I was hoping about SSG. And I am sorry to Virtus.Pro and all of your players.
You got to put some respect on the name from VP here. Huge performances from the DPS. I think Sana had an especially great game here, maybe even better than I would have expected, despite his great performances recently. And also VP caught me off guard with something that I didn't expect from them. They really didn't rely much on the double flex support. Yes, on Circuit Royale, they had a specialized poke comp to deal with, a Ryan style that they saw coming, given that SSG had showed it before. But they played mostly Lucio the whole series. They took the rush mirrors with Ramatra and just played greedier backline DPS. I mean, it was really well strategized. It was a better look than we saw in their last series. They were the team who adapted. They were the team who continued to improve.
Yeah, and I think, that's just really not what most people would have expected coming out of this series. While Lijiang Tower, that was still thought closely. I feel like in that brawl mirror,
it was really close.
That one could have gone either way.
It could have gone either way, and on all three stages too, we saw several different looks. Here's Backbone on the Reaper, but it already then felt like Virtus.Pro, they made quick substitutions at the start of the round where we saw Sana. He went from the far to the Tracer, and they had a plan to deal with it accordingly. Gotta give some credit to Shockwave. I think he played that round spectacularly to close things out on Lijiang Tower. And I mean, here as well, like they just knew that this Rhino composition was coming out, and they played around it beautifully.
Yeah, the Widow from Sparker, I think, was really... I think it can win, right? With Widow being behind the Rhine shield, there's no true answer to her in the comp. But in the end, you're putting so much weight on Sparker's shoulders. It's kind of unrealistic to expect that to work every time, especially with how well the VP DPS played, so hard to catch, so elusive in their positions in Bastion, just could not find purchase. But for me, it was honestly, VP... I thought they were over-reliant on the double flex support, and they showed that they're not. Today, they really showed that they can hang with the main support, they can play conventional styles, and they were able to outmaneuver an SSG who I think also had the same read that okay, let's punish this double flex support. That's what beat us the last time around. And I think VP were just ready they had that next step adaptation already in the books. They know what they showed, they know the strengths that they put out, and they were already ready to bring another layer of depth before SSG gets a chance to refine.
Yeah, that also just goes to show that VP probably extremely aware of the shortcomings that they do have if they're playing that double flex support. So for them to be aware enough and have such a quick turnaround in making those adaptations, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, Sana is going to be our player of the match, and we've been talking up Sana, especially you, Zoe, nominating Sana for MVP, and now in the finals as well. This Tracer clip is nasty. I mean, hitting that post bomb, great stuff from Sana here all around. I want to give a shout out as well, not our player of the match, but a shout out as well to Rajaro.
Yeah.
I think Rajaro played really well, both on the Brawl, on Lijiang Tower, but then also there on Circuit Royale as well. And what a come up for this guy, Rajaro, as well. But Sana is our player of the match, and it's well deserved.
Yeah, I for Rajaro as well, I think great picks throughout the series, immaculate. I was constantly in the back room thinking yeah, that's the perfect response. They have the counter comp. They're in a big advantage here, and that's Rajaro's flexibility coming out on top over Hadi, who was relying on tried and true styles. SSG returning to their some of their classic comps with these fast play rush comps, but Rajaro shut that stuff down. He was not caught off guard. He was ready to take that aggression and wasn't playing scared either.
Absolutely. Well, the whole team was ready for this one. We actually have an audio-only interview now with Shockwave, who should be with us right now. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello, guys.
Hello, Shockwave. First things first, usually I would say congratulations, but first, apologies are due.
We're sorry.
We're really sorry. We all thought that SSG is going to run away with it, but you guys played phenomenally today. Let's talk about those adaptations, because obviously we've seen a lot of that double flex support coming out from your team, and we did identify that as a potential weakness that could be abused by the opposition, but you had an answer for that today. Was that kind of what you were trying to achieve by switching it up? Did you feel like if you would have run that double flex support, that would have come back to bite you against SSG?
Actually, I feel like we can actually just win versus SSG, just even like in Rush Mirror, like I think we did today. I don't even think we need to go to double flex. I think we're actually just a bit of a joker team. I think we're kind of inconsistent. Like we just get absolutely first held, completely smashed by ends, you know, and then we just like win free of like SSG versus SSG. So maybe today we can make like a turn against that team now, but I don't know. Sometimes we're just off, and today we weren't. So yeah, I don't, yeah.
That bodes well for your next matchup going up against ENCE in the grand finals. What did you guys take away from that last series? Of course, ENCE did kind of shut you guys out. Now going into the grand final, it's going to be a long series, best of 7, of course, a lot of room for map picks and adaptation. What, if you can reveal without revealing maybe too much strategy-wise, how does the team feel right now? What's the mindset going up against an opponent like that?
I mean, I think we tried some comps, but I think they have pretty good answers, like on the slow comps, like Hybrid and Escort. I mean, we did get first held right yesterday on King's Row, and then on Shambali it wasn't too pretty as well. So I don't know, we might try something else. But again, I think sometimes it's also just like trusting your strong comps, right? Like if we play bad and we just lose because they're better, like so be it. You shouldn't always like just scapegoat the comp. So yeah, we'll see as we go through the series. But yeah, should be okay.
Should be okay. Well, that's real talk, Shockwave. Thank you so much for taking the time. Best of luck in the grand finals.
Thank you.